So today we're going to go over a 9-month in review look at our Golden Rocket Expert Advisor. So when you design a bot, you always hope and do your best to make sure that the go-forward performance will be just as good as how it looked in the backtest. But the really interesting part of algo trading is going back 9 months, a year later, and seeing how it fared since it's been developed. So Rocket is actually quite cool, and then I developed it over the previous Christmas break, and then I essentially just put it on an account and let it run for a significant period of time. So today we're going to go over how it's done, we're going to look at the backtest, and we're also going to look at the strategy and see how it's been working in different market conditions. So Golden Rocket, as you can see, has been running here since December 22nd of 2024. So as mentioned, it was during Christmas and I was at home playing around with expert advisors and I came up with this strategy. And the whole strategy behind Golden Rocket is it's a take on a very classic support and resistance style EA. So one of the most popular style of expert advisors is just to place pending orders at local highs and local lows. And if you've ever seen the bots of Lothi Milo, for instance, on the MQL5 marketplace, he or she has developed a ton of different bots which follow that premise. And then there's different takes on this. Like Wim is really good at developing supply and demand zones around local highs and local lows. And there's lots of different bots which are based on this premise. For around a year prior to developing Golden Rocket, I was trading a bot called Golden Sniper, where we just placed orders at highs and lows, and essentially when price were to kind of tick up to those levels, like here for instance, they would be triggered. The big issue I found with that is that you could oftentimes have very bad false breakouts. And if you were in a ranging condition, you could all of a sudden have many different losers in a row. And to essentially protect against that, I wanted to come up with a better, more robust strategy. So how Golden Rocket works is we pretty much look for the highs and lows on a higher time frame, and we use that to identify a key level. And then we zoom in to a lower time frame like the M5, and we would only decide to trade this level if we saw a big candle piercing it. And that big candle would have to pierce it for the first time. So we're looking for a fresh piercing of the level. So to give you an example, like this would be identifying a level, and we'd go here at around 10 a.m., and we'd zoom in on the M5 and we'd look for a piercing of that level. So it would not be identified quite yet until here. And then if this candle was seen to be large enough, we would then enter. But this candle would have been quite small. Whereas like let's say we were to pierce the level for the first time here, we would then have entered because the candle was much larger. And not to go too much into the weeds, but effectively that's it. We're looking for a pierce or breakout of a support and resistance level, but we're also looking for the confirmation of a massive candle bursting through that level, because that means that likely there's a bit more like volume at play, and there's probably going to be a continuation, as opposed to if there was not a lot of volatility, it may have just gently ticked up, touched the level, and reversed. Then there's a few different ways to kind of do this style of breakout system. As you guys know, I also make the Ultimate Time Bomb EA, which is also based on placing pending orders, but there it's literally just placing them at highs and lows. However, in that context, you have time as your proxy for volume. So if, for instance, you place a pending order caller right before the market open, you can, with a higher probability, think that there's going to be a pierce at the level because markets are opening and you have that confirmation coming from time. If you just place orders at highs and lows at a random time during the day, you don't have that confirmation, and that's why using the big candle as the confirmation I found to make a very robust expert advisor. Some other cool things about Rocket is that it only allows one trade per day, one loser per day. Therefore, you're capping your risk and making it prop firm compliant. So it's quite interesting. As you guys can see, we had around a 20% annual return with around 7.5% drawdown. And this was using very low trade settings. And here, actually, around here, I switched it to something being a bit more conservative. But I've had clients who've modified this as EA users should to kind of fit their own preferences. And they've seen a higher return. Some have seen lower because they've been even more conservative. But it's been very robust to date. And if we look here, we've had quite good months. During some of the craziness around the tariff time, it was a bit less stable. We also had some very good months kind of in the summer of this year when gold started to resume a more normal style of price action. So quite interesting, actually. And if we look at the back test too, we can see that the equity curve is generally speaking matching. We're having some choppier periods, but also this style of like staircase is indicative of an inverse risk reward, but not an overly inverse risk reward. It's roughly a 1 to 2 inverted risk reward. And if we come up here and we contrast it, we can see that, yes, indeed, that if we look at the average loser versus the average winner, we indeed have that roughly 1 to 2 risk reward, and we also have a very high win rate. So that's usually what you would see with a gold scalper. And then obviously you could then modify this to be higher risk reward or lower risk reward, and just based on how you set your take profit and stop loss levels. So generally speaking, what I look at when I see this is that the premise was solid. Like clearly, if the fact that you could forward test it for several months and it keeps making higher highs, that's a good sign. And this is because there's a pretty strong reasoning behind it. Support and resistance has been around forever, and pierces of the level seems to be giving a pretty robust strategy. At the same time, it did perform well in both uptrends and downtrends for gold, which is a really good sign. Some other things to note is this is clearly a scalper, so probably better for personal account than prop. Prop works well with super high risk reward. That's why our prop bundle is more of that style. Whereas this would work well with a tier 1 broker, like Vantage, for instance, where you can have really good trading conditions. So overall, looking quite solid and quite pleased with it. So how I would potentially improve this going forward. To date, I've seen that Rocket, it doesn't trade that frequently. So if somebody were to be looking for a bot that takes more trades, then you would probably want to reduce some of the filters or reduce some of the thresholds which determine what a big candle is. Here, for instance, we're saying that the candle needs to be over $2 and it must be 2 times the ATR. I've had some clients which have made these thresholds lower so that you're still piercing a support and resistance level, but you can still trade even with a smaller candle. But that would be a personal preference, and you need to essentially test to see how many trades you would have and how the profit factors would ultimately change. But overall, I've been very pleased with how this bot has performed over the past year. We're also seeing that this is a good complement to our more longbow swing style bots if somebody is looking for more of a scalper. And of the scalpers that we've developed, this is definitely one of our best. So yes, very pleased so far, and it's cool to kind of look back and see how it's done. And essentially, if you guys are looking to actually have Rocket for free, we now have a partnership with our sister company, Prosperity IB, where you can actually get this completely for free, provided a few conditions are met. So I'm going to link that in the description that you guys can check out and get Rocket completely for free. So let me know if you have any questions, and have a wonderful day.